Okay, so can I start?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so very good morning to you all.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning, sir.
So good morning. So before I begin the lecture, I want to take a couple of the questions from the dynamic compaction. If you wish to ask any question, you are most welcome. First of all, so anybody wish to ask any question with regard to dynamic compaction? Okay, so no problem. Let me introduce to you one of the ground improvement techniques, that is the vibro flotation. So this is one of the in situ ground improvement technique. There are two terminology. If you look at the vibro flotation, there is a vibro and there is a flotation. So I will explain the fundamental meaning of this vibro flotation in the subsequent slides. Uh, Vibro flotation is one of the in situ technique of densifying the soil. So this technique also, there are several names for the vibro flotation. Vibro flotation is a technique, but within which we normally discuss about another three terminology. Those are vibro compaction, vibro replacement, and vibro displacement. I will demonstrate about these three techniques schematically in the subsequent slides. But when you come across the names or the terminology like vibro compaction or the vibro replacement or vibro displacement, you should understand that everything is related to vibro flotation. Vibro flotation. So vibro flotation technique is used to densify thick, loose granular soil deposits. So again, this technique is highly valid for the granular soils, free dry soils, clay materials. So this technique was first developed in Germany way back in the 1930. So in Germany, this technique was first used. So this technique is most effective to densify the soil below the water table, but it is also effective above the water table. So it is equally effective, but more effective of soil below the groundwater table. So it is highly effective for natural sand deposits and artificially reclaimed soils. So again, so the deposits has to be coarse granular materials like sands. So vibro flotation is basically valid for in situ densification of free draining granular soil such as sands. So this technique is effective up to a large depth of 70 meters. Then the basic principle of any ground improvement technique is to improve the bearing capacity and decrease the either total or differential settlement and subsequent engineering properties like improvement in the liquefaction and so on and so forth. So let us try to understand when and where the vibro flotation is ideal. If we recall, we were discussing about the conventional compaction where we did discuss that the soil is compacted in different number of layers, but the thickness of the layer shall not exceed 200 to 300 millimeter. So as is seen here. Now wherever conventional compaction cannot be implemented, then we normally go for high energy impact compaction where we can see. So when you resort to high energy compaction, we can vary the depth of the improvement as shown here from D2 to D4 depending upon the amount of energy that you are applying, say 10 kilojoules or 15 kilojoules, 22, 25. As you are increasing energy, so you are improving uh, the more and more soil depth. You can see 500 to 750 meter soil can be uh, densified when you go for 10 kilojoules of impact energy, and 15 kilojoules up to 1 to 2 meter, 22 kilojoules 1.5 to 2.5 meter, and 25 kilojoules 1.5 to 3 meter. So this is what we have seen. Now, wherever there is a limitation and where we need to improve or densify the soil for further depths, so then we went for the dynamic compaction, where the dynamic compaction is effective up to a little more deeper depths, that is 15 meter or even up to 20 meter. 20 meter. Now just imagine a situation where in the field you are asked to improve the soil even further, say more than 20 meter. So then what kind of the technique you use or adopt for improvement of the soil at such large depth? So one of such a technique is the vibroflotation. I hope it is clear to you all in a very systematic way. If it is in number of layers, then we go for the conventional compaction. If you want up to 2 to 3 meters, then we go for high energy impact compaction. Then if you want up to 15 or 20 meter, then we go for the deep dynamic compaction. Then if you want even further depths, then we go for the vibroflotation ground improvement techniques. Now if you look at the validity of these techniques for particular soil types, the conventional compaction is valid for any kind of the soil, because we compact here only the soil in layers of 200 to 300 millimeter thick. Now if you go for the deep dynamic compaction or the vibroflotation technique, so they apply huge amount of energy in, say, the impact form or the vibration form. So we need to have a soil type which could able to offer resistance to these impact or the vibration. That capability is there only for the granular materials. So therefore dynamic compaction and the vibroflotation techniques are typically valid for coarse free granular materials. So let me explain you what is the fundamental mechanism of the vibroflotation. So first of all, the vibroflotation, if you ask a stepwise, now let us try to understand the stepwise the mechanism. So this is the ground of which you would like to improve or densify the soil. So first of all, you bring the equipment to the site. So this is called as a preparation of the site and mobilizing the equipment to that particular site. The second is you need to advance the borehole. So for that purpose, we use a device called as a vibrofloat. As you can see in this picture, so this is called as a vibrofloat. So this is a vibrofloat, and this is the schematic diagram showing the different parts of a vibrofloat. So this is a huge machine. So this is a huge probe, in fact. So maybe a couple of meters, and this as a provision of injecting the water at the bottom as well as at the sides, all along the throughout the length of the probe. The probe length is in terms of the meters, it's not in centimeters. Okay, so the second thing is, so we need to advance the borehole. For advancing the borehole, we use the help of water jet. So when you use the water jet, this water jet so loosens the particles. Once the soil particles are got loosened, then the probe simply sinks, and thereby we can advance the borehole. So this is the second step in the vibroflotation technique, where we can understand how we can advance the borehole. So in the third step, so this is the most important step. So here involves the fundamental mechanism of the vibroflotation. Now when you advance the borehole with the help of the water jet, what happens is all the particles get loosened, but we also use water jet. So there is a possibility of the water, the soil particles mixing together. As we can see from this right side picture, you can see there is a bubbling out of the soil mass from the borehole. So this bubbling out is because of the application of the vibration. Here the vibration is used in the lateral direction, not in the vertical direction. So when you talk about the vibroflotation, so here we induce the vibration energy to loosen the soil. That loosened soil so mixes with the water. Now when the soil particles are mixed with the water, they are some kind of a floating condition. So that's why it is called as a vibroflotation. So the soil particles are under the floating condition. So in another way of understanding this one is when you inject the water because of the jet force. So there is a kind of a liquefaction, localized liquefaction or the quicksand condition that is created. Now, as you know from your undergraduate courses, when there is a liquefaction, the soil gets densified. The same phenomenon is mimicked in case of the vibroflotation. So because of the liquefaction or the quicksand condition, the water comes out to the top and the soil particles gets rearranged at the bottom. Now here we also apply the energy in the lateral direction. So therefore, for advancing the borehole, uh, so we use the water jet along with the vibration, but during the densification we also use the vibration, but we also pour the backfill material that I will show you. Okay, so but the fundamental mechanism is so inserting the probe, that is called as a vibro probe, into the loose free granular materials. Now why the material has to be freely granular and has to allow the free drainage is, just imagine if you are dealing with the clay. So first of all, advancing the borehole is not that much easy. Second thing, uh, the clay particle, when it is mixed with the water, it can convert that water into a slurry. So the condition of the flotation of the soil particle we may not able to attain in case of the clay materials. So that is the reason this technique is valid for the granular materials. So as you can see, so this schematic diagram also further explains you the mechanism. So this is a penetration of the vibro probe. Then once the probe is driven to the desired depth, then we apply the vibration energy alone. So this vibration energy is spread in the lateral direction, not in the vertical direction. So because of this vibration energy in the lateral direction, certain amount of the soil in the lateral direction gets densified. Now how do you understand that whether that soil got densified or not? So the same thing is reflected at the ground in the form of a formation of a sinkhole. If we observe that kind of indicates that the soil in the lateral direction is getting densified. That means once the soil got densified, so there is a formation of the void. So therefore you need to compensate the void which has been formed because of the compaction. That compensation is done by filling with the backfill material. So this filling will be done from the bottom of the borehole. So as we can see from the top left side picture, so this is called the backfilling. The backfilling will be done from the bottom of the borehole until so we are going to the top. Now if you look at the completed backfill material, this forms some kind of the column. That column is called as a sand column or the granular column, depending upon the backfill material that you are using. So you can say if you use only the coarse sand, then it is called as a sand column. But if you use the aggregates, then that is called as a granular column. So typically we normally use only the granular materials. So these are the cross-section details of the vibration. So as you can see here, these are the different parts of the vibrator. So it applies the vibration frequency, but this vibration is a function of the frequency. So we can measure that frequency in the form of an amplitude. That amplitude is in the range of 15 to 30 millimeter, and this is the power requirement, and this is the frequency. So 0 to 3000 revolutions per minute. So this lateral energy is applied throughout the length of the probe. So vibrocompaction drives a vibrating probe into the ground, which generates lateral vibratory force to rearrange the particles into a denser state. I explained you how rearrangement is taking place. So due to the compaction. So induced forces overcome the interparticle friction. So then only there is a possibility of the liquefaction or the quicksand condition. So and thereby rearrange the particles to achieve the denser state. So this is the fundamental principle of the vibroflotation technique. Now, depending upon our requirement, so as I explained, there are three more terminology when you talk about the vibroflotation. That is your wish is to go for vibro simple compaction or the vibro replacement or vibro displacement. So depending upon the amount of energy that we apply, there are three kinds of the zones that normally form from the center of the probe, as you can see here. So right adjacent to the probe, the zone is called as a plastic zone. That means the soil is completely sheared. It is under all the particles are under the floating condition. That's why it is called as the plastic zone. Then adjacent to the plastic zone, the soils are under elastoplastic zone. So this is the zone which is typically undergoing the compaction, then followed by the elastic zone. Now if you look at the fundamental meaning of elastic zone, elastoplastic zone and plastic zone, elastic zone means the removal of energy. Upon removal of the energy, the soil regains its shape. That means whatever the densification that could happen in the elastic zone, it may regain to its original. That means we can't expect any kind of a densification in the elastic zone. But in the elastoplastic zone, there is a recovery and there is a permanent deformation, which indicates typically the compaction is happening within that zone. Then the followed by plastic zone. Plastic zone means permanent deformation. As you can see, so in this bottom schematic diagram also, so this is the vibratory probe. So this is vibrator. Then right adjacent to the vibrator, the soil is under fluidized condition, fluidized zone. Then followed by the compaction zone, then followed by the elastic zone. Now if you ask a simple question, when I go for the vibroflotation technique, can I expect some kind of a zone of influence? Zone of influence. So this schematic typically talks about what is that zone of influence. Here we can see the 1 and 2 zones are nothing but the zones of influence of the vibroflotation technique, not the zone 3. Only zone 1 and zone 2 are the zone of influence within which the soil is getting densified. That means since we have a zone of influence, we need to go for the some particular pattern, that is a grid pattern, maybe triangular or maybe square, depending upon the design requirement or depending upon the degree of improvement that we are achieving based on the zone of influence. So this is again the fundamental mechanism. Normally we not only encounter the saturated soil, we also encounter the unsaturated soils. Whatever the fundamental mechanism that explained so far is valid only for the saturated soil. In case of the unsaturated soil, so when you apply the vibratory energy, so this vibratory energy overcomes the interparticle friction by collapsing the soil structure. Once there is a collapse in the soil structure, so consequently there is a formation of the void space. So in a large scale, as we can see from these pictures, you can see, so there is a collapse of the soil, a formation of the void, and this void is further filled with the backfilling material. And the top right schematic diagram also explains how the soil densification is happening. So in the vibroflotation technique, so the same schematic is valid for the liquefaction also. So just imagine you have a loose in situ soil at the field, then there is a liquefaction. During the liquefaction, the soil gets liquefied and the particles maintain a floating condition. Upon the removal of energy or the dissipation of the energy, so then the water bubbles out and all the soil particles goes down. All the soil particles goes down. This is called as a densification. This is called as a densification. This is what exactly happens in case of the liquefaction. So here you can see this this slide talks about the zone of influence. So as we can see from the left side picture, so there are two zones that has been shown here. So the red hatched portion, that is zone A. So here a cylinder of a compacted material. So this cylinder of a compacted material is under fluidized condition, or within this zone the backfilling is done. And there is another zone whose width is B. This is cylinder of a compacted material produced by single vibrofloat compaction. But this is the entire diagram is a cross section diagram. Now since we are going to use, or we are going to improve the soil's engineering properties over a larger area, so if you look at the plan view, so this is how it looks like. So this is the plan view. You can see these inner dot circles indicate the vibroprobe location, while the outer circle indicates the zone of influence. So the space between the two vibratory locations is probe spacing. So this could be one of the design parameter. And here they followed so the triangular pattern. So triangular pattern, and this is one row of vibroflotation, and this is another row of vibroflotation. So this circle, outer circle, is called as a zone of influence. So this is also another schematic diagram that is in cross sectional view, which indicates the different zones of the influence. Based on the several studies, so the typical zone of influence varies from 5 to 15 feet depending upon the amount of energy that you are applying. If it is a less amount of energy, then we may densify the soil up to only 5 feet in the lateral direction. So in the lateral direction from the center of the probe. If the applied vibration energy is very high, then we can improve the soil in the lateral direction, so up to as large as 15 feet. So this is 15 feet. Then how do you improve the soil throughout the borehole length? So what we do is normally, so we first drive the vibroprobe up to the desired depth, say 30 meters or 40 meters or 70 meters, whatever is the desired depth. Then we start densifying the soil from the bottom to the top. So therefore, since the width of the probe is a definite length, so definite width, so therefore we can compact only the soil in a particular zone. That means once this zone of the soil is compacted or densified, then we have to lift the probe in the upward direction, lift it, again compact the soil in that zone, then again lift it, then compact the soil. So therefore, thereby we compact the soil from bottom of the borehole to the top of the ground surface. So usually a lift of 0.3 meter, so 300 millimeter is normally practiced, and the vibration energy is applied for about 30 seconds. So that will be good enough. But these are the typical values. So you need not to confine to only these values. So these values might vary depending upon the gradational characteristics and depending upon the amount of energy that you are applying. So there are several factors that can further influence in the decision of the lift thickness and the time required for applying the vibration energy. So a few of the things we can also discuss. So these are the different steps in the vibroflotation. The first step is preparation of the ground and driving of a vibrofloat. So driving of a vibrofloat. So this is also called as a mandrel. So in the step 1, a grid is marked out and the vibrating mandrel is inserted into the ground and to the desired depth. Second, as the mandrel driven into the ground soil, so during the driving it displaces some soil mass. So this displaced soil mass is refilled with the backfill material, but this backfilling normally done from the bottom of the borehole to the top of the borehole. So these are some realistic pictures. So this is the vibro probe. This is a probe or mandrel, whatever it is. So that it is inserted into the ground. So during the insertion, it creates some kind of the void space. So this is a void space, and this space is the backfill material. In fact, this backfilled material also is further compacted using the vibratory probe. As you can see. So this is a large void that has formed because of the densification of the in situ soil. So there are variety of the probes available, and different probes are being used across the world. So these are the couple of schematics of different probes. There is a Terra probe, there is a vibro rod, Viprobe, vibro wing, Muller resonance compaction. So different companies have developed different kinds of the probes, and depending upon the requirement. Sometimes we may not require injection of a water or water jet for advancing the borehole. For example, as you can see in the previous, so here we don't require any amount of water jet. We simply drive the vibro probe into the ground and densify the soil in the lateral direction. So this is typically called as a vibro displacement or vibro compaction, simple compaction of the soil mass. And often we require water jet help to advance the borehole. So therefore, depending upon the requirement, people have developed different varieties of the probes. So these are the different probes available for vibro flotation ground improvement technique. And there are some limitations when you go for the vibro flotation, because hoping you are using huge amount of vibration energy for compaction of the soil sample. And this vibration energy is not remained only at one location. It gets transmitted from one location to the another location, as we can see in this picture. Of course, we can expect some kind of the dampening or the dissipation in the energy, but still there is some amount of energy which gets propagated in the form of a wave. So if just imagine that an adjacent building is not designed for that particular propagation of the wave or wavelength or amplitude, then there is a possibility of the collapse of the adjacent structure during the vibro flotation technique. So therefore you need to be a bit cautious. So when you use the vibro flotation technique, so that's why usually either dynamic compaction or the vibro flotation techniques are implemented in the open ground where there are no surrounding structures built in them. So therefore we don't need to bother about the collapse of the adjacent structures. But even then you need to make sure that so there are no built-in structures in surrounding the site where you are going to have the ground improvement by deep dynamic compaction or the vibro flotation. So in view of the inherent dangers in the form of a wave propagation. So this is another picture which also describes about what kind of zones that are forming. In fact, a few things already we have discussed. So again, this is a little deepening. So this is the vibro probe location, and here that includes how much amount of acceleration that gets generated. So when you use the vibration energy, as you can see, right adjacent to the vibro flow, there is a almost huge amount of acceleration got developed, which is equivalent to 3 times of g. In fact, if you compare this g with the g level generated during the earthquake, so this g level is much higher. So then in the elastoplastic zone it is 1 to 1.5 g, and in the compaction zone this is 0.5 g. Oh sorry, so it's a reverse. Oh, sorry, correct. So this is right adjacent to the vibration vibro probe. So this is elastic zone, compaction zone, fluidized zone. Correct. So this is dilatory or fluidized. So here fluidized means everything is in liquid state or the fluid state. Dilatory means there is a small volume change. So this is the idealized response of a soil to the applied vibration. So this is the graph between shear strength versus the G level, the acceleration due to gravity. So this is another interesting diagram that also describes about what happens during the vibrocompaction. You can see the top leftmost, the top left graph. So this is a relationship between wire ratio versus distance from the probe, and it has been drawn for different number of cycles. So 10 cycles, 20 cycles, up to 120 cycles. First, let us try to understand the right side diagram. If you look at the right side diagram, which is a time versus depth. So there are basically three fundamental steps involved in the vibroflotation technique. So first of all, we insert the probe up to the desired depth. So this is probe insertion. So insertion of the probe with a high frequency. In fact, the frequency is required. Then what we do, we extract the probe. But during the extraction, there is a compaction. Then followed by the compaction. So there is an insertion, there is an extraction, and there is a compaction. So these are the three fundamental steps involved in any vibroflotation technique. So we inserted to the bottom and we ended up at the top. So each represents one cycle or one lift. So this simply represents one lift. This is second lift. This is third lift. This is fourth lift. So on and so forth until you are reaching to the ground surface. So fundamentally you should understand that there are three steps involved in the vibroflotation. You are inserting the probe, you are compacting the soil, and you are extracting the probe. Then the consequence of these three steps is the left side two diagrams. What is happening to the wire ratio? So from the probe distance, so this is distance r from the center of the probe. So as we can see, right adjacent to the probe, so the wire ratio high means this is a floating condition. So this is floating condition. Then we can say the elastoplastic soil, then the elastic soil. So this indicates, say for example, at r distance of 4 meter, behind 4 meter first of all, there was no change in the wire ratio, even after applying the 120 number of cycles. So this indicates that there is no influence of the vibration energy behind 4 plus meters. This is the first observation that we can make it. Then as you are increasing the number of cycles, there is a reduction in the wire ratio. You can see for 10 number of cycle, so then 20 number of cycle, 40, 60, 80, 100 and 120. Just imagine you have started with the single initial state where the initial wire ratio is the 0.75. So 0.75. So when you apply the energy, then there is a decrease in the wire ratio. So this is due to the densification or the compaction. But this is happening up to certain distance, and thereafter, so the wire ratio is as it is only, or there is some increase. But this zone is maybe or may not. Compaction is happening. So this is one of the indicative diagram to understand how much is change in the wire ratio or how much is the change in the volume of the soil. So that we can ascertain whether desired densification is attained or not in the field during the vibroflotation technique. So similarly, this is deep vibration and surface vibration. This is due to the surface vibration, and this is due to the deep vibration. So we can also understand the difference between the surface vibration and the deep vibration. So deep vibration is more effective as compared with the surface vibration. Okay, so these are a full description about to make you understand the performance of the vibroflotation technique.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, can you explain that acceleration graph again?
acceleration.
Yes, sir,
This one.
this one. Yes, sir.
Okay. See, when you use the vibro flotation technique, you are going to apply some kind of vibratory energy. So that vibratory energy is measured in the form of a acceleration due to gravity. Okay, and right adjacent to the probe, if you measure the acceleration, which is almost equals to 3 times of g, while as you go away from the probe in the lateral direction, so the amount of energy gets decreased because of the dissipation of the energy. So therefore, if you go a little far away from the probe, so the acceleration is decreased from 3 to 1.1 to 1.5 g, and if you go further, then there is a further decrease in the acceleration. Now from your earthquake engineering subjects, you understood that if there is a change in the acceleration, there is a change in the void. There is a change in the void ratio or densification in the soil mass. The same thing is happening here. So the decrease in the acceleration indicates the decrease in the propagation of lateral energy. So up to that particular zone. Now depending upon the amount of energy, the soil particles may be in fluidized state, or maybe in the compaction state, or maybe in the elastic state. In the elastic state means no compaction is happening. In the compaction zone means the soil is getting densified. In the fluidized zone means the particles are simply in floating condition within the water. Okay, so in fact the same thing is related with the shear strength. When the soil particles are in fluidized, this is like a liquefaction condition or the quicksand condition. The shear strength is 0. So in the compaction zone, the shear strength is minimal. In the elastic zone, the shear strength is high. So in fact, when you apply the energy, so that indirectly is a means that you are overcoming the interparticle forces, which is nothing but the shear strength of the soil only.
Sir, this dilatory zone will correspond to the plastic zone.
Yeah, plastic zone.
So, but this graph is at the state when we have inserted the probe,
Inserted the probe and when you apply the energy.
when the vibration has initiated.
Correct.
So, after when the vibration will be completed, then the shear strength at dilatory zone will be maximum.
No, it doesn't mean. During the operation, what will happen to the shear strength? See, after the vibro compaction is over, then you are going to create a column, that is aggregate column.
Yes, sir.
That I will explain. But for the time being, you try to understand that. So this is the soil condition during the operation of the vibro probe.
So, during the operation in the elastic zone, the shear strength will be maximum.
Obviously, elastic zone means least amount of energy is getting transferred in the lateral direction.
So, least densification is also occurring at that zone.
Correct.
So, how, if the densification is least, so how the shear strength will be maximum, sir?
Because the soil is not getting affected at all.
Okay.
You got it? That means the energy is not getting transmitted up to that lateral distance.
So, sir, means the elastic zone is least affected zone. So, shear strength is maximum in that zone. So, how the improvement is done? Means we are densifying, that's okay. But if the shear strength is not increasing, then what's the use of that?
Now there was no use. See, when you talk about the performance of a vibro flotation, we have something called as a zone of influence.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for example, if you look at this one, this is zone of influence. Now, if you look at the left side diagram, there is a red hatched cylinder, there is a white hatched cylinder, and there is a soil outside the cylinder also. The zone A indicates within this zone the soil is in fluidized state. You understood now?
Yes, sir.
Within this zone, the soil is in fluidized state.
Okay, sir.
So the outside the zone A, So for example, within this zone, so within this zone, the soil is in elastoplastic condition.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Then
Yes, sir.
outside the zone B, so within this zone, the soil is in elastic condition.
Okay, sir. Means when backfilling will be done in zone A, then the strength will increase.
When backfilling is done, backfilling will be done only in zone A.
Yes, sir.
But when you do the backfilling, you do the backfilling by applying the vibration energy.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So
Yes,
because
sir.
of that vibration energy, the zone outside A, that is zone B,
Yes,
this
sir.
soil gets densified.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So because of the impact within the zone A, that
Oh,
means at the end of the zone B, the amount of energy getting transmitted is 0.
okay.
Okay. So therefore, no energy transfer means no compaction.
Okay, sir. So at the edge of zone B, we'll get the maximum shear strength.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Maximum
so
shear strength means no disturbance to that soil at all.
okay, okay.
Okay. So this is a demonstration about what is happening to the wire ratio. So as a function of the radial distance, and what are the three fundamental steps in the vibroflotation technique. So this is another interesting diagram. So that talks about the degree of influence versus distance to compaction point. Now as a function of the percent fines. Suppose if you look at this one, so if the percent fines are decreasing, if there is no silt and clay fractions, so there is this is the compaction energy and percent silt. So as you are increasing the compaction energy, as you can see from this picture, with increase in compaction energy, there is more and more zone of influence. More is the energy, more is the radial distance. That is, more is the zone of influence. So more are the fines content in a given soil, least is the influence. Because we did discuss in the previous class, the clay particles will absorb they absorb the energy. So therefore, when they absorb the energy, there was no transmission of energy in the lateral direction. That's why the fines content affects the degree of influence in the lateral direction. So this graph talks about two things. If you increase the compaction energy, there is a more and more the width of the soil gets densified. That is called as a more degree of influence. But within the same soil, if there are more fines content, there is a less degree of influence, because these fines will absorb the energy and thereby will not allow the transmission of energy in the lateral direction. So the fines content is a negative effect on the vibroflotation technique. So as I did discuss in one of the slides, so when you talk about the vibro methods, there is a vibro compaction, there is a vibro replacement, and there is a vibro displacement. So this is the basic definition of all the three. Vibro compaction means densifying the in situ soil without removal of the backfill. So simply compact the in situ soil without the filling the void which has been created with any kind of a backfill material. That is called as a vibro compaction. Now next is vibro replacement. In the first one, it is only the compaction, simple compaction. In the second one, there is a replacement. Now here, who is replaced with the what? The replacement means we are replacing the void that has been created in situ soil with the backfilled material. So with the backfilled material, vibro replacement means remove in situ soil backfilled with high quality fill. Here remove means the voids. The voids in the in situ soil are backfilled with the high quality backfill material. That's what is called as a vibro replacement. Vibro displacement that I will talk about. So here also backfilling is involved here also. But if you look at the vibro compaction, we are simply densifying the in situ soil. So ultimately, if you look at, there is an overall reduction in the volume at the top surface. But in case of the vibro displacement, we are going to create altogether a new element that is called as a granular column, as you can see from this picture. So this is a granular column. So this is a new column that has created because of the vibro replacement. One of the simple example of the vibro replacement is stone column, ground improvement by stone column, or ground improvement by sand drains. So that we will discuss in the next class. So sand drains or the stone columns are built by vibro replacement method. So now from this slide, you should understand that when you go for the vibro methods, we can directly compact the soil under in situ condition without backfilling the void which has been created in the ground. Second, we can also we can also create some kind of the granular columns. Those are called as the stone columns by using the vibro flotation technique. So we will discuss about the vibro replacement, that is stone column, so as one of the ground improvement technique in the subsequent classes. But from this slide, you try to understand two fundamental things. When you go for the vibro flotation technique, either we can do the compaction, or we can create the stone column. So this is the stone column, a simple example of the stone column, the vibro methods. So first we are driving the probe up to the desired depth. Then we started filling the backfill material from the bottom. Now as we apply the energy in the lateral direction, so as you can see that the aggregates are pushed in the lateral direction depending upon the amount of the shear strength exists in that condition, or the amount of energy that we apply. And if you look at the completed vibro replacement, so this is how we have created vibration column. Material that is called as a vibro replacement. Then vibro compaction and the vibro displacement. So here normally we don't use any kind of a backfilling material, but this is vibro displacement. Displace soil backfilled with high quality fill. So these are some important information about the validity of the vibro flotation. So vibro flotation with or without additional backfill has been widely and successfully used to treat the weak sandy soils. So vibro flotation is typically valid for sandy soils. Okay. When I talk about the stone columns, the same vibro flotation technique is used to create the stone columns, but the stone column technique is valid for the clay. So therefore, don't get confused about the methods. So try to understand very intricately. When you are talking about the vibro compaction is valid only for the weak, the granular soils. Okay, vibro replacement is also valid for the granular soils, but by resorting to vibro replacement, we can create the stone column. These stone columns are typically built in clay soils. That I will explain. Better not to discuss about those things. So then vibro flotation method without backfill was only thought to be proper for treatment of medium and coarse sand with fine particles less than 10%. So we did discuss in the previous slide. So we can go for vibro compaction or vibro replacement depending upon with or without addition of a backfill material.
Sir, what is the difference between replacement and displacement here?
In fact, both are same. Both are same. In replacement, we remove the soil and replace it. Okay.
Okay,
In displacement, we will not remove. We'll simply push in the lateral direction, and because of as a result of pushing in the lateral direction, whatever the void created, that void is filled with the backfill material.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So since you are asking it out, let me explain again. In case of the vibro compaction, only the soil is compacted without adding the backfill material. In case of the vibro replacement, the soil which has been removed from the in situ ground is filled with the backfill material. In case of the vibro displacement, the in situ soil is compacted in the simply displaced. There is no removal of the soil involved in it. And as a result of displacement, the void created is filled with the fill material. So this is the difference between the vibro compaction, vibro replacement and vibro displacement. But if you look at closely, the vibro compaction does not create any kind of a stone column. But vibro replacement and vibro displacement may create some kind of the stone columns. Both these techniques can be used for creating the stone columns. Because removal refill creates the stone column. Displace and refill also creates the stone column. Now in generally, vibro flotation and vibro compaction both can be used as a synonyms. So therefore don't get confused. When somebody is talking about the vibro flotation, they are talking about the vibro compaction only. So vibro compaction, this encompasses two techniques. First, vibro flotation, which uses a vibro float that vibrates in the horizontally. The second utilizes the vibrating float which vibrates vertically. So depending upon the application of energy in the horizontal direction or the vertical direction. So this is the applicability of the vibro flotation technique. The requirements of the soil. The soil, the rapid. So if there is rapid drainage, then there is a possibility of the soil turning into the slurry. So therefore, the water has to come out quickly. So the permeable enough to allow rapid drainage of the pore water during the compaction process. Now there are two things. If the water will not come out also, there is a problem. If water exists and during the compaction, then there is a possibility of the creation of additional excess pore water pressure with the existing water. So therefore, there has to be rapid drainage. All the water has to come out. So the permeability is high enough for all granular soils with less than 10% of fines and with less than 2% of clay. So this is one of the limitation when you try to select a soil for vibro flotation technique. Make sure that the total fines contained are less than 10% with the clay content of less than 2%. Okay, so this is one of the requirement. So when you select the vibro flotation technique, then the friction angle must be high enough to permit the passage of compacting shear waves. So since we are going to use huge amount of energy, so because of this energy, there is a possibility of the breakage of the particles. Okay, or they have to allow the passage of the shear waves. So if there was no friction angle and there was no passage of the shear waves, if there was no propagation of the shear waves, then there was no densification. So this requirement is usually satisfied if the soil is well graded. So sand or contain very platy mica minerals that would increase the soil compressibility. Then effect of compaction, this we have seen already. The sand and gravel particles rearrange into the denser state. So this rearrangement takes place because of the quicksand condition or the liquefaction condition. The ratio of horizontal to vertical effective stress is increased significantly because you are compacting the soil sample in the lateral direction. The permeability of the soil is reduced to 2 to 10 fold. Then the friction angle typically increases up to 8 degree and settlement of the soil mass are in the range of 2% to 15% and typically 5%. The stiffness modulus can be increased. So these are the obvious consequences of the vibro compaction. So these are the discussions about the vibro compaction or the vibro displacement. So vibrating rods are forced into the ground, causing the surrounding ground to compact and consolidate. So this already explained it. I will skip it up. And so this is a requirement for the vibro compaction. Validity for different kinds of the soils. For sands, the vibro compaction is excellent. Silty sands, marginal to good. Silts, poor because the drainage is a poor. Clays, not applicable because there is no drainage. The permeability is quite low. Mine spoils, it is very good because mine spoils largely comprise of granular materials. Dumped fields, depending upon the nature of the fields. If the dumped fill is coarse grained material, then the vibro compaction is valid. If it possesses the fine grained particles, then it is not applicable. So in case of the garbage, it is not applicable. Okay, so the applicability of vibro compaction for different ground types. Then somebody also tried to give what happens if the silt content or the fines content exceeds certain value to the validity of the vibro compaction. So here it has been shown. So this is the before improvement and this is the after improvement. So if this graph was drawn after the ground has been densified by the vibro flotation technique. So after improvement, the improvement was ascertained by measuring the SPT and value. So in the ordinate, we can see the SPT and value. So in the x-axis, it is a finer content. When the finer content is less than 10%, the SPT value is very high. While as you can see, when the finer content is increasing above 10%, there is a drastic decrease in the SPT1 value. So which in fact, you can see a marginal difference in the SPT value before and after improvement. Before and after improvement. If you recall during the dynamic compaction, we did discuss about that to ascertain a significant degree of improvement, the SPT value should be above 20. Should be above 20, but that is in case of the dynamic compaction. So in case of the vibro flotation, as such there is no requirement, but somebody has given a beautiful relationship between SPT value and fines fraction post compaction. So from this you can understand what is the influence of the fines fraction on the degree of improvement. So this is the reason the vibro compaction is not valid if the fines content is exceeding the 10%. So this is identifying the soil types depending upon the gradational characteristics. So somebody has given a beautiful graph. So this is Woodward in the year 2015. He has classified the whole gradational characteristics into different zones: zone A, zone B, zone C, and zone D. Zone A, vibro compaction appropriate but penetration difficult. Suppose if you look at zone A typically comprises of the gravel. So in case of the gravel, compaction can be achieved quite easily. But since the particle sizes are above 4.75 millimeter, they impede the movement of the vibrator probe. So that is the reason the penetration becomes difficult in case of the gravel. Zone B, the most suitable for vibro compaction. Zone B typically comprises of only sand particles. So in the sand, the vibro compaction is ideal and it's excellently valid. Zone C, so this is vibro compaction feasible, but longer time is required. Since in case of zone C also, majority of the soil is sand, but with significant amount of the silt content, still we can compact the soil sample. However, as compared with the zone B, in zone C, little large amount of energy is required. Zone D, so it is not feasible because it is a silt. And this is the performance criteria. Actually, this information is I compiled from the different presentations and different sources. So for better understanding, so for most vibro compaction projects, the performance could be considered as 60% relative density for core slabs, flat bottom tanks, embankment, 70 to 75% relative density for column footings, bridge footings, 80% relative density for masonry mat foundation. So let me explain a bit elaboratively about the performance criteria. Now, in case of the dynamic compaction, to ascertain the degree of improvement, we read that the minimum SPT post compaction should be about 20. Should be about 20. Now, in case of the vibro compaction, the degree of improvement is measured in the form of a relative density. In the form of a relative density. Now, depending upon the application, what should be the minimum relative density post vibro compaction? That's what these three sentences talks about. Suppose if you are wishing to use that particular site for floor slabs, flat bottom tanks and embankments, the minimum degree of relative density improvement should be 60%. 60%. It should not be below 60%. It should be above only. Then the same relative density, if it is for column footings and bridge footing, should be 70 to 75. 70 to 75. And if it is for machinery and mat foundation, it should be 80. Minimum 80. Now let us try to recall. You have a classification scheme for degree of relative density. This you have done during your, in fact, when your undergraduate. So if the relative density is less than 40%, then that is called as a loose sand. Then 40 to 60, it is medium sand. 70 to 75% dense, and above 80 stiff, or so on and so forth. So the same thing is can be corroborated herein for these three statements. So relative density 60 indicates maybe medium dense soil, 70 to 75 high dense soil, and 80% indicates further high density soil. So this is further information. In fact, same thing, compilation of the previous two slides. There is one additional information is the vibratory probe compaction is effective if silt content is less than 12 to 15% and clay is less than 3%. So I have given the demonstration in the form of SPT versus fines content slide why the silt content should be constrained to below 10%. It should not be more. It should not be more than 10%. Similarly, the clay content also should not exceed 3%. A coarser backfill facilitates production and densification, and probes inserted in grid pattern, it is spacing of 1.5 to 3 meter. So this is some additional information from this slide. So these are some benefits of the vibro compaction. So this we did discuss already. I don't need to emphasize it. So this is also the applicability of the vibro compaction for different soil types. But as I told, when you talk about the vibro replacement, in case of the vibro replacement, you are going to replace the in situ soil with the backfill material. In situ soil with the backfill material. But when you do the backfilling can be done from two ways. Either you can directly pour the backfill material from the ground as shown here, that is called as a top feed system. That is called as a top feed system. So herein the backfill material is directly poured from the ground surface. So first what we do is we drive the probe up to the desired depth, and we keep on pouring the backfill material from the top. So first to the bottom, and again compact it. Because of the compaction, it is the granular material is pushed in the lateral direction, and thereby it creates some kind of the column, that is called as a stone column. So this is called as a top feed system. Now in addition to, there is a bottom system also. The bottom feed system, the material is allowed to pass all the way through the probe. So the bottom of the probe has a facility to leave the backfill material. So this is here you can see. So the backfilling is done with the help of the probe itself. The probe has such a kind of the provision. So the top feed method and the bottom feed method. So these are the two ways of using to go for the vibro replacement. Technique. So this I already applicability soil type. So most coarse granular soils with the fines content of less than 10% are considered acceptable for. We can compact the sands, gravels, and the slags. So this is the same thing. So different people has given different zones. So this is another interesting graph which also talks about the applicability of the soil type. So if you look at the right side bottom graph, so this is a relationship between the cone penetration versus the frictional ratio. So this is again the the CPT only. Now, depending upon the values of the CPT, that is cone penetration resistance versus frictional ratio, the frictional ratio means you have a fair idea about what is the meaning of the frictional ratio. This is simple definition. Now, when you draw a relationship between cone resistance versus friction, so these you can identify the different zones of the soil sample. So, depending upon the ratios, they have earmarked three zones: a compactable zone, marginally compactable zone, and not compactable zone. Now, this graph is quite useful because, say for example, on a particular soil type, so you conducted a cone penetration test as a function of the depth. Now, here you should understand, when you envisage the vibro flotation technique, we normally do the densification for at least 40 meters, 50 meters for a farther depth. Okay, and accordingly, initially you need to make a borehole and collect the soil sample at an interval of 1 meter or 2 meter or 4 meter, 5 meter, depending upon your interest. Then you have to keep on reanalyzing. So whether the entire profile is remains same or is there any change in the gradational characteristics. If at all there is a change in the gradational characteristics, accordingly either you have to increase the energy or decrease the energy depending upon the fines content. Now, to understand the same thing in a much better way, what you do is you conduct cone penetration test, say up to 60 meters. Now we have a profile of the cone penetration resistance and the frictional ratio from 0 to, and you try to superimpose depth of the soil is more compactable and which depth of the soil is marginally compactable and which depth of the soil is not compactable. Okay, so this graph are useful for identification of the soil depth, the soil type, which is compactable or not compactable. So this is some negative. So these talks about some negative aspects of the fines content. The presence of the clay layers or excessive fines content or the organics may pose serious problem to the vibro flotation. The same thing can be read here. So these materials generate excess pore water pressure, which greatly inhibits volume change and results in preventing. Suppose if there was no dissipation of the excess pore water pressure quickly, then the volume change will not happen instantaneously. Just try to recall all the discussions so far we have made. We are making the granular column instantaneously. We are just making the floating condition of the soil, and at the same time we are doing the backfilling and compacting the soil. So we literally do not have any elapsed time between the filling and the making of the borehole. But in case of the fines content, we need to have a sufficient elapsed time to allow the dissipation of the pore water pressure. So that is another reason why the vibro compaction is not valid for the fine grained soils. Significant limitation of the is radial densification. More damping means less radial distance densification. If in situ soil contains particle sizes of too great, then there is a difficulty in the penetration of the probe. So then,
sir, the graph which we obtained previously, this one, so this is for some particular soil or in general, sir?
This is in general.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now, since the first slide we were talking about the backfill material, then can I use any kind of the backfill, any kind of aggregate as a backfill material, or is there any specific criterion which helps me to select the aggregate which is ideally suitable as a backfill material? So accordingly, a rating system has been proposed by Brown in the year 1977. So this is called as a suitability number. So this is the equation he has given, the suitability number. Depending upon the value of the suitability number, we can say whether that particular aggregates are useful or not useful. Say if the suitability number of that aggregate is between 0 to 10, then it is excellently useful as a backfill material. If it is 10 to 10%, then it is good. 20 to 30% fair, 30 to 50% poor, greater than 50% unsuitable. So we should be within the range of excellent to good. So your backfill material should fall within the range of excellent to good. Otherwise, you should simply discard it. So this is the rating system for selection of the backfill material. This basically depended on gradational characteristics only, that is D50, D20 and D10. Now this is some empirical equation. So now we are also talking about the change in ratio. How much volume that could happen in the reality if vibro compaction is applied to in situ soil sample. So this is simple understanding. There are two criterions that we did discuss. One is with backfill and without backfill. So how to talk about or how to calculate volume change without backfill. So here we have taken a simple three-phase diagram. As we know, this is volume of the solid and this is the volume of the void. If you look at the left diagram, this is AE, that is zone of influence or the cross-sectional area of the vibro compaction, or where you are inserting the vibratory probe. This is pre-compaction and this is the post-compaction. So this is the post-compaction. Now VF is nothing but so the volume change after post-compaction. So ideally speaking, this is the total change in the volume that is happening, or in other way of understanding this one. So this is the volume of the soil that should be replaced with the aggregate material. Now these are some mathematical correlations. So based on this three-phase diagrams, equating the change in the volume A into S, where S is the change in settlement. A into S is nothing but Vs, that is volume of the solid, multiplied by 1 plus E naught, that is initial void ratio, minus the change in void ratio E1, and this can be written as Vs into E naught minus E1. So if the improvement depth is H, there are two things that we have to understand. S is the change in height and H is the total depth of the improvement. H is total depth of the improvement and S is the settlement at the ground surface. So based on these relationship, so Vf is equals to AE into S. So Vf is initial minus the final void ratio. So AE into S can be related to S into E minus E void ratio. So but we are dealing with the certain depth of the soil, that is the improvement depth is H, so which is related with the initial volume of the soil sample. So that is V naught is equals to AE into H, which is nothing but again the initial volume Vs into 1 plus E naught. So this is initial void ratio. So the same volume, both are volume terms, but expressed, this is initial volume in terms of the void ratio, this is initial volume in terms of the geometry. So if you try to equate or divide, so the two equations 3.26 and 3.27, then we will get a relationship between the depth of the improvement versus the settlement at the ground in terms of the void ratio. So we can able to calculate the initial void ratio, we can able to calculate the final void ratio. So I know what is the depth of the improvement. Therefore, I can able to calculate what should be the probable settlement at the ground surface. So this is simple analytical expressions derived based on the change in the void ratio. So this is without backfill. Now, if you consider with backfilling, So the same relationships but expressed in a different way. So this is the initial. So this is the initial. The final volume is nothing but so initial minus final. So this is Vs 1 minus E naught. Then you have to again go for equation 3.27. So this is the initial volume, but expressed as the dividing equation 3.27 by 3.29. So this is the initial volume divided by the initial volume. Then we come up with another equation. So considering the volume of the backfill, so Vf, this is the backfill volume required, that is pi by 4 into d square into h. So where d is the diameter of the zone of influence, or the diameter of the stone column, So these are all analytical derivations. You can go through it when I share the slides. It is quite easy to understand. I don't need to explain anything because it is equating the change in volume with the initial volume only. Now here, since we are talking about the backfilling, so we have to take into consideration of the spacing. So we can go for typically two variety of the spacing, square pattern or triangular pattern. So for square pattern, this is how we can able to calculate, and for triangular pattern, this is the analytical equation, and keep on substituting the space equation, then we will arrive at this analytical equation. So I'm not explaining about much about all these things. I'm just giving all the slides. So just go through it. Okay. So now let us consider. Let us come to the design aspect or design considerations. There are different points when you talk about the design. The very first one is the performance criteria. So this already we did discuss. The minimum relative density depending upon the application should be it should be greater than 60% for core slabs, flat bottom tanks and embankments, and it should be greater than 70 to 75% for column footings and bridge foundation, and greater than 80% for masonry or mat foundations. The next thing is what should be the area and what should be the depth of the improvement. So in general, the area of the improvement should be larger than the foundation area. So suppose say, just imagine you want to do the vibro flotation, but on top of which you are going to have a footing foundation. Suppose if you look at this diagram, schematic diagram A, this gray hatched square indicates the footing. Now what should be the total area that should be improved is indicated by two circles. Similarly, so the same thing, this is the gray hatched area indicates this is the area where footing is going to be constructed, and these four circles indicates the improvement required. So either you can go for either two circles or four circles or three circles, whatever, depending upon the footing shape, for different shapes of the footing. So then how do you decide the grid spacing and grid pattern? There is a graph developed by D. Apollona. He is the person who has developed a relationship between 3 to 4 parameters. First, influence coefficient for Webb Hall. There are two persons, Webb Hall and Apollona, two independently proposed. So the x-axis is as a two terms. One is distance from the vibro float and the relative density, and this is the diagonal curve, and Apollonia. This is an influence coefficient. How to use this one design? How to use this design chart? Say for example, do I have any example? Yeah, so I have some demonstration. Another important thing is this design chart is valid only for the triangular pattern as shown herein. S is spacing between the two probe locations. This is a equilateral triangular pattern. So we can go for square, triangular, or square, rectangular, triangular pattern. Typical spacing is 1.5 to 3.5 meter. So D. Apollonia, so he proposed for a single 30 HP vibro float, and Brown, so this is a Brown web, he has proposed for 100 HP fine to coarse sands. So this graph is used by two people. One is Webb and Hall, D. Apollonia, and these two people did work on two different vibro floats. So D. Apollonia tried to use 30 HP single vibro float. So considering the 30 HP single vibro float, he developed this graph. And Brown, so considering 100 HP probe and of the soil of fine to coarse sand, he proposed again the same graph. Now how to use this graph? Let us see. From a target relative density dr, draw a vertical line up to intersect the relative density line. So this line is relative density line. This is relative density. Now, depending upon our performance requirement, we have a target relative density. So here in this case, say for example, this is 75% is your target relative density. Now draw a vertical line onto the relative density line, onto this diagonal line, wherever it is touching. From there, you draw another horizontal line onto the ordinate. Now this will give you one influence coefficient. Say for example, here in this case it is 13. Here in this case it is 13. Now this 13 number should be divided by the number of probe locations. That's what. So draw a horizontal line from the intersect point to the right, or left to the method that you are using. Okay, divide the factor of 3 to account for the accumulated contributions from the 3 compaction points. So as I told, so here we got an influence coefficient of 13. Since this entire graph is valid only for equilateral triangular pattern, divide 13 by 3. So then what we get is the spacing requirement, that is S. Spacing requirement, that is S. Or based on the influence coefficient for a single point compaction, draw an horizontal line to intersect the selected curve. From the intersected point, draw a vertical line to find the distance to the vibro float. This is so this gives your spacing requirement. There is another point. Sorry, there is another point. So once, say for example, you got a 13. So this 13 divided by 4. So this you got approximately, sorry, divided by 3 you got, so approximately how much? 4. So from the 4, so this 4, so draw another line. Onto either this dark line or dotted line. Here you can see. So this dotted line is typical application. Above dark line is proposed by Brown, and below dark line and dotted line both are there. Below dark line is proposed by Webb and Hall, and dotted line is proposed by the D. Apollonia. So draw another horizontal line onto any of these three depending upon the method you have selected. Say Brown or Webb and Hall or D. Apollonia. Then wherever this horizontal line is intersecting these curves, from there you draw another vertical line onto the x-axis. So this gives the spacing. Yes, this gives the spacing. Yes, that you should adopt in the real life. So I will explain again. So just to avoid the confusion, so first what you need to do is select target relative density. Say here in this case it is 75. Draw a vertical line from the relative density on to the relative density line, that is this diagonal line. So from the point of intersection of vertical line with the diagonal line, so project another horizontal line onto the ordinate, so in the right direction, or the influence. Here in this case, I obtained the influence coefficient value as a 13. Since this graph is valid for a equilateral triangular pattern wherein 3 vibroprobe locations are involved, so therefore divide 13 with 3. So then what we get, the outcome is the 4 value. Outcome is 4 value. Now on the same ordinate, identify the 4 value, numeral 4. From there draw another horizontal line on to the curves proposed by different people such as Brown, Webb and Hall, D'Apollonia. So wherever this horizontal line intersecting the curve, from there draw another vertical line on to the x-axis. So try to read this x-axis value, which is nothing but the spacing to be adapted for vibroflotation technique. So this is as simple as possible. Anybody has any questions?
Sir, this spacing divided by 2 will give us the radius of influence.
Correct.
Okay, sir.
So this is another selection. So based on the relative density and side surface area for compaction probe. This is proposed by the different people, Howard and Baker. So as for Howard and Baker, so he has categorized the soil into 3 zones: zone A, zone B and zone C. Zone A, within which it is a silty sand with 5 to 15% silt. Then zone B, uniform fine to medium sand, that is clean sand. Zone C, well graded and clean sand. So first here also you fix the relative density. Depending upon the soil type falling in the zone A or zone B or zone C. So draw a horizontal line. So draw another vertical line onto the x-axis and pick up the surface area. So from this surface area, so side surface area for compaction probe. So from this surface area we can calculate the diameter of the zone of influence. So there is another graph that is proposed by the Thorborn. This is a relationship between allowable bearing pressure to limit settlement to 25 millimeter versus what is the x-axis? Sorry. This is spacing at the center of the vibration. So suppose here if I know the allowable bearing pressure to limit settlement, that limit settlement is 25 millimeter. The limit settlement means 25 millimeter. That means it is typical ratio of allowable bearing pressure by limit settlement. If I know this value, then I can pick up the spacing to be adapted for vibroflotation technique. So these are the 3 different criterion proposed by 3 different people. So this is proposed by D'Apollonia, Webb and Hall or Brown, and the zonation is proposed by Hayward Baker, and the settlement ratio, bearing pressure versus settlement ratio, is proposed by the Thorborn. So you can use anything, it doesn't matter. So this is relative density, we have discussed about this. So these are the test patterns. You can go for anything, A, B, C, D or E, depending upon the area. So these are the patterns and grid spacings. So these are also patterns. So this also we did discuss. Sir, these are all. Skip it. So this is what all about the vibro flotation technique. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. Yeah, any questions, please?